John Lynch has already appeared this morning on KMBR, and he gave Jake Moody a strong vote of confidence. And he talked about Jake Elliott last night. And he's like, hey, Elliott's a pretty dependable kicker, but he missed a couple field goals in a PAT, and it happens. And we have a lot of faith in this kid. Talking about Jake, he had a rough day. We all have rough days. He's like, Jake's earned a lot of respect from this organization. They think he's going to be a great kicker for years to come. They will not be cutting him. So if you're tweeting right now, hey, Niners cut Moody, you may want to park that tweet because Lynch says no, it ain't happening. Chase, I'll throw it to you. Do you still have faith in Jake Moody after missing 3 field goals last week? Did the Niners maybe rush him back? And how much further do they go with him if he continues to struggle in your mind?
We always have to remember that the word fan is short for fanatic, and that's what makes our jobs a lot of fun. People tune in, they get fired up, they're very loyal to their team, they're going to defend their team. And when bad things happen, when players have bad performances, when things snowball, oftentimes there are a lot of overreactions. That's why you and I do a lot of overreaction segments, right? Because we respond to what the fans are saying. And when I'm live during the game on Sunday and Jake Moody is missing 1 kick and then a 2nd kick and a 3rd kick, it was going downhill. It was ugly. And you're watching that game, you're wondering what the heck is going on. And of course, you take a look at the comment section and people are saying, trade Jake Moody. Well, it's post the NFL trade deadline. That's not going to happen. Cut Jake Moody. What is happening with Anders Carlson? Why isn't he kicking with this team? Matthew Wright seemed to do pretty good. And I told everybody at that moment, calm down a little bit. I do think that the Niners are to blame a little bit for how they mismanaged this. I don't think that Jake Moody was healthy coming off the bye week. He clearly didn't look healthy. And he kicked the ball as if he were not healthy. And I thought that maybe the Niners rushed him back a little bit. And this all goes into Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers not prioritizing special teams and not taking it seriously enough. As for the individual player, I'm not overly concerned about Moody. Keep in mind, it is a mentally fickle position. So if you were to come out against Seattle and miss some kicks, then yes, I would start to be a little bit concerned. But even during his rookie year, when a lot of people were against Jake Moody, I thought that he was actually pretty good. He was 21 of 25 on his field goals for 84%. He was 60 of 61 on his extra points. They're not a gimme any longer because they're now longer kicks. He was 2 of 3 on kicks of 50-plus yards, 4 of 6 on kicks of 40 to 49 yards, and he was pretty automatic in that 0 to 39 range. He only missed 1 kick, and everybody wants to focus on the blocked extra point in the Super Bowl. Can we please give Jake Moody some credit for hitting 2 clutch kicks of 50-plus yards in the Super Bowl when the pressure was on? He's a young kicker. I think he's going to be okay, has a strong leg, has a clutch leg going back to his days at Michigan. And yes, John Lynch makes a good point. Look at Jake Elliott. Jake Elliott has been nearly automatic since coming into the NFL. This year, he's having a down year. He entered Thursday Night Football having connected on 80% of his kicks. That's well below what he's usually at. He's been really good at 50-plus yard kicks and 60-plus yard kicks. He's hit a bunch of game winners for Philadelphia. He misses 2 kicks that usually are gimmies for him and an extra point. I'm not overly concerned about Jake Elliott. I'm not overly concerned about Jake Moody. But if the misses continue, that is when you start to have some concerns. But they don't have track records of going on these awful stretches.
It's such a weird situation because they did invest a 3rd-round pick in him. If they had just signed him off the street, he wouldn't have as long of a leash. But because they know that in some ways their credibility, or at least Lynch's credibility, is tied to that draft choice, they're going to want to give this kid the every opportunity in the world, and yet they're a contending team. So, you know what? They may have rushed him back. I did an interview with him before this game, and I asked him, how you feeling? He said, I'm feeling good. I said, do you have any pain at all? And he's like, well, only sometimes at the point of contact. So it's like, well, wait a second. Isn't that kind of a big deal? So we'll see. I mean, you know what? Make the kicks. Anders
Yep.
is a Jet, by the way, so Carlson's gone, so that
Yep.
ship sailed. Matthew Wright still beat up and hurt, so he's not an option. They had to actually sign another punter this week because Mitch Wishnowski's got a back injury, and he may not be able to go on Sunday. They may have to go with this Pat O'Donnell, who somebody described as the Jimmy G of punters. I haven't seen him, but supposedly
he's a good-looking dude. Suave is a good word for him.
Okay, yeah, there you go. Awesome that we have a handsome punter. I mean, will it help us? Anyway, let's talk special teams before we move off of this. It has been a circus.
Yes.
I like Brian Schneider. It has been a nightmare. They've had 9 games, and 7 of them have had massive negative special teams plays. What would you do to try to right the ship special teams wise? Would you fire Schneider? Would you dump Moody? What would you do? I've got a couple ideas, but I want to hear yours.
I would not move off of Jake Moody unless against Seattle he goes 0 for again and misses 3 kicks and costs you the football game, which he nearly did against Tampa Bay. Or if he misses some kicks and it turns out that he's not healthy, put him on IR and bring in another kicker. As for the special teams unit, what do you do? Because here we are in the middle of November. We're about to embark on week 11. Do you fire your special teams coordinator? What's the alternative? And what route are you going to go if you do fire Brian Schneider? The thing that I'm concerned about is that he was a good special teams coordinator while with Seattle. He took like a year off. He comes back to the 49ers after they originally had special teams issues. He was supposed to right the ship. He hasn't. And my job as a host, your job as a host, is to drive ratings, drive views. A coach's job from the head coaching spot is to win ball games. A special teams coordinator's job is to have that unit clicking and not be a circus. And you using the word circus is perfect. It has been a circus. And I see some content creators trying to defend the Niners special teams on YouTube, on X. It's unacceptable because you can't talk about this special teams unit without mentioning it's been an unmitigated disaster. And it has been for several years now, especially under Brian Schneider. Their EPA on special teams year by year since 2020, 29th, 24th, 13th, 23rd, and this year, 31st. And so that is just not sustainable. It is costing San Francisco ball games. They are also second to last in DVOA. And we're talking about botched punt returns. We're talking about bad punt coverage and kick coverage. We're talking about extra points and field goals being blocked. It is just horrendous. And I think that Kyle Shanahan just needs to take that third phase of the game more seriously. Look at like Dave Taub for the Kansas City Chiefs. They block a chip shot field goal to win the game. Look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. There was like a stretch where they had 3 straight weeks earlier this year of a return that went back for a touchdown. And you see San Francisco, they don't have big returns. They're giving up big returns, and they always have these avoidable mistakes. And what's maddening to me, all the Niners have to do is be average on special teams. And Larry, they can't even muster being an average special teams unit.
Okay, so it's Seattle week. So, I've done a bunch of interviews already this week with people in Seattle. And since Brian Schneider was there and he won a Super Bowl there, I figured this would be a perfect week to ask these people, what the hell's going on here? It's like, what was this guy a circus there, or was it? And, I guess he did have some personal issues at the end of his run there, and I haven't researched them. I think I did when they first hired him, but I don't need to go into his personal past, nor do I really care. But they all said that he used starters on special teams in Seattle, and maybe it's time for that. Maybe it's time to put 3 or 4 starters on special teams. Maybe that's the route to go. The other one is, it's like Kyle keeps saying that he doesn't want to lose the game on special teams. He doesn't care about winning the game on special teams. Just don't lose it on special teams. And you have Trent Taylor, who's the most sure-handed guy, but you keep going with Jacob Cowing, who keeps falling down. He's had a muff punt. He looked the other day like he was going to fumble until luckily at the last second he kind of secured the ball. I don't trust. I like Jacob Cowing, and I like him as a downfield threat in the pass game from scrimmage. I don't like what I've seen from him thus far as a special teams return man. He looks very, very nervous.
Yeah.
He looks very, very unreliable. You have the most reliable guy there probably is in Trent Taylor on your practice squad. If you're going to pay Trent Taylor a nickel, don't you want him, fair catching or returning kicks? If your stated goal is to just not lose the game on special teams,
Yep.
why would you go Cowing over Taylor there? I like the idea of big plays from Cowing, but if you're already in this mode of like, we just don't want to lose the game, then why not go with Taylor?
Yeah. And that's the one thing that he offers you. He is not explosive. He's not fast. He doesn't really have a lot of short area wiggle. He's not really going to make a lot of guys miss. He will catch the punt safely, securely, and he will run ahead for 5 to 10 yards. And if Kyle Shanahan doesn't want to lose games on special teams, yet it's costing you games or nearly costing you games, then you want a secure option back there who you can at least trust. Now, as far as playing special teams players who are playing starters on return units, we see a lot of starters across the NFL who contribute on special teams. I do think it's pretty notable. The Niners signed Nick McLeod this week. He's a pretty good special teamer. They brought back Patrick Taylor. He has some special teams experience. They bring in Pat O'Donnell, who's punted like 30% of his punts inside the 20. Mitch Wishnowsky has really been shaky since the preseason. He dealt with the knee. Now he's dealing with the back. Do they try to get a little bit better there? But Kyle Shanahan said something very surprising this week, that they're not going to devote more practice time towards special teams. I firmly disagree with that. To me, that's a little bit shocking. You have to devote more time to it if you want to be a little bit better. I get it. We're in the middle of November, and you're not going to overhaul units and make massive adjustments as far as personnel because you can't. It's not free agency, right? But you have to devote, I think, more time to it because it's damn near costing you football games, and you can't afford those plays to happen when you're in a playoff game, which are oftentimes decided on the margins, when little things can cost you games going up against teams like, let's say, Detroit or Philadelphia, who have as much talent as you or equal talent or maybe even more talent.
One more topic before we do our Bet US wager of the week. I was doing a stream the other day with Grant, and he brought up some really interesting stats on Bosa. This is the percentage of snaps Bosa has played since he's been a 49er by year, okay? 2019, he played 76%. 2020, he was hurt, so we'll take that one out. But 2021, he had played 78%. 2022, 74% of the defensive snaps Bosa played. Last year, he played 75% of the defensive snaps. This year, he's playing 86% of the snaps. So then I went and looked at some of the numbers for Floyd as well. Floyd last year played 10% less snaps than he's playing right now. They're playing Floyd and Bosa more snaps than they should, and they're not nearly as effective in those snaps because they don't have any good depth. Because Robert Beal and Sam O are the only guys up. So they're forced to play these guys. And Bosa, is wearing down. And he, that effort that he gave last in the fourth quarter on the fourth down with Baker was shameful. I kind of wonder if they're going to even get to January with Floyd and Bosa. I think it's a major freaking problem. And I asked Nick Sorensen about it. I'm going to let you hear his answer. I don't think he gave me a very good answer. Not that he owes me anything, but I think it's a pretty straightforward question. And I don't know that I got a straightforward answer. Tell me what you think of this. Here's me with Sorensen yesterday, or I guess, yesterday. Let me see if the volume's up here. No, it's down. Okay, so here we go.
Bosa and Floyd are playing a lot of snaps. 86% for Bosa. Mm-hmm. It's as far away as career high. What's the plan to make sure those guys get to January Is Matos coming back? Are you looking at free agents? How do you help those guys?
We try to, but we want to win the game. And I think it's something Bosa, he's willing to do. And obviously you want to protect him, but there were a couple games early on we didn't have as many snaps either. So you can talk percentage, but it's also depending on the game. I think that happened early in the year at a high percentage, but some of those games we were in the 50s. So it really depends on the game situation.
I mean, I hear what he's saying there, and he's right. There are some games where they played less snaps, but Nick Bosa has not been as effective this year. Leonard Floyd for the first year, Leonard Floyd's had 9 sacks a year for the last 4 years running. He's been one of the most consistent guys. Both these guys are playing 10% more snaps than they did a year ago. Both these guys have been less effective than they were a year ago. I think it's cause and effect. They don't seem like they're worried. It's like, well, yeah, we want to limit his snaps, but we want to win the game. But dude, the whole game plan is, you can't overuse these guys, or you're not going to have them when you play Detroit in week 17, and you're not going to have them in the playoffs when you either can or can't make the Super Bowl. So to me, they're not Lynch's inability to add an edge rusher has cost this team. They're going to, he can ignore my question all he wants. He didn't say anything about Yetur Gross-Matos. Lynch said today maybe Gross-Matos is ramping up. He practiced this week. Maybe he'll go. So maybe Gross-Matos is the answer. Maybe they're going to have to go off the street for a free agent, but this is not sustainable. You will not be able to play Bosa and Floyd, the snap count that they're playing right now, the percentage of snaps they're playing, and have them be healthy in January. So it's like, are you concerned? Shanahan's not worried about running CMC into the ground. Sorensen ain't worried about running Bosa and Floyd into the ground. And I think both those guys should be very concerned about running their great players down with too much play. They don't seem to be concerned. Or if they are, they're not copping to it.
Yeah, this is a great conversation to have, and that's why you and I, going into the NFL trade deadline, when we talked about trade targets for San Francisco, we were mentioning defensive ends. Za'Darius Smith, a veteran. Azeez Ojulari, a younger player. Earlier this year, do you try to poach Hassan Reddick away from the New York Jets when he was holding out? This is a byproduct of the Niners being very thin along the entire defensive line, but also at the defensive end spot. They don't have enough depth for Bosa to have as much rest as he's had in previous years, which is why he's on the field so much. Because what's the alternative? They don't have a lot of other options who can consistently pressure the quarterback. And that's why I've talked about on my show, with you, with others, how something that I've noticed with this Niners defense, because of their lack of depth, they will start games coming out guns a-blazing. They'll get pressure on the quarterback. They'll get sacks, quarterback hits, quarterback hurries. But as the game goes on, they start to wear down. Now, against Tampa Bay, Bosa really hadn't done much. He's, of course, dealing with the hip pointer. He had that massive sack of Baker Mayfield. And then I chalk it up for Mayfield just having a great play. Should Bosa have taken him down? He has the weight, size, strength advantage. You're gripping him up by one arm. He's like smiling, thinking, Baker, you're not going to get rid of this football. Baker Mayfield got rid of the football. It nearly cost San Francisco the game on top of those Jake Moody misses. But I'm worried about the workload for sure, because when you think about Nick Bosa's resume in the playoffs, so 2019, he's a rookie, and they played 3 playoff games en route to the Super Bowl because they had home field advantage. And he had 2 sacks against Minnesota. He had 1 sack against Green Bay, 1 sack against Kansas City, and his quarterback hits in those games 3-1-1. In 2021, he had a half sack in the first playoff game, 2 sacks against Green Bay, 1.5 sacks against the Rams, 1-2-2 quarterback hits. He was tired in 2022, and he had no sacks in those 3 playoff games, and he only combined for 1 quarterback hit. And so last year, there was some pressure on him to produce. I thought he did. He had 2 sacks against the Lions. Those were his only sacks during that playoff run in those 3 games, but he had 12 quarterback hits in those 3 games, 5, 4, and 3. And now we're starting to see Nick Bosa maybe starting to wear down a little bit. I will say, I think that sometimes sack numbers are looked at like wins and losses for a pitcher. It doesn't always tell the full story. To me, ERA is a more important statistic. I get it. He is being paid $34 million per year to sack the quarterback. His numbers are still pretty good. According to Pro Football Focus, he has a pass rush grade of 86.9, overall grade of 90.4, a run defense grade of 75.1. His tackling grade stinks. It's less than 30. He missed another big tackle against the run against the Buccaneers. But look, he does have 49 pressures, 33 hurries, 5.5 sacks, which isn't bad. It's definitely not the DPOY type of year that he was putting together a few years ago. But you can blame San Francisco's front office for not being able to find viable edge rushers and depth pieces to help him out. And when you look ahead to the draft, I think you need a center, you need a right tackle, and you need another edge rusher. Outside of that, I think you're in a pretty good spot with this football team moving forward.
Yeah. I'm sure we could come up with a couple other needs too. We got this one. Kind of D's. Has Larry come up with a list of available free agent defensive ends? I'll share the screen on this one since you asked the question, and I deliver when people ask. Okay, so here is the list. This is Spot Track's list of available defensive ends. I'll just throw these names out and tell me if any of you like any of them. Yannick Ngakoue.
I think he signed with the Patriots, but I'm not sure after he was let go a few weeks ago. But
by Baltimore or Chicago?
He was let go by Baltimore, and then I think he cleared waivers and signed with the Patriots
on their practice squad. Oh, did he? Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure he signed with the Patriots. Yeah.
Okay, so then there's Jordan Phillips, who's kind of a 5 technique. Henry Anderson, more of a 5 technique. Shaq Lawson, that's an interesting one. He was good in college. He's never really done it in the pros. Of all these guys that I'm seeing on this list, I like this name, Myjai Sanders, who played at Houston, and Houston's loaded, right? Houston's got some really good players, so I like Myjai Sanders. He was good in college. He was with Arizona, I think, before. Rangy, young. He's only 26, so he's pretty young. Other than that, Bradley and Nye was with Dallas. He was a great edge rusher at Utah. I don't know what he is in the pros, though. Shaka Tony.
Kamoko Toure was with this team last year, did nothing.
Right. Austin Bryant was here.
Yeah.
Justin Houston. What do you think of that name? Bruce Irvin.
Older guy, but he's been productive.
Yeah. I mean, of this group, I like Myjai Sanders the best. Yep. That would be the group. That would be the guy that I would try to get. I mean, first of all, they need to go sign somebody. They only have Alex Barrett on the practice squad. I'm eager to see what happens. I mean, if Gross Matos wasn't able to return, what this week reminds me of? It reminds me of a week where we're not really talking about major injuries. And then we're going to get to Sunday and it's going to be like, oh, Bosa's not going to go, but Yetur Gross Matos is going to go. And we're going to be like, whoa, Bosa's not going? I get the feeling that maybe Bosa isn't going to go this week. I don't know. Maybe we'll see. I don't have any source on that, but it just seems like Gross Matos is coming back, and Nick clearly is dinged up, and with the hip.
That would be a shame because against Seattle back in week 6, he was all over Geno Smith. He took over that game. Are the Niners looking to manage his workload a little bit for the reasons that we're talking about here? And do they think that they can get away with not playing Bosa against Seattle? I will say, if you want to look internally, do you start to give Sam Okuwanu some more snaps? I think he's actually been pretty impressive. He only has 119 pass rush snaps this year, but he's been very productive with those reps. Different position, but while I'm thinking about it too, Evan Anderson has really given this team a lot as a young player, former UDFA, who's a rookie, who is now on the active roster. He's been good. Does he help you along the interior with your pass rush in general? I think I'd give some more snaps to him, but slim pickings with the free agency market, no doubt.
How do you feel about Gross Matos? I mean, he could be coming back. He was he's always physically been the guy. I mean, if you watched him at Penn State, he's always been the prototype. It hasn't really happened for him. Some people feel like the Niners are getting him at exactly the right time, and he's going to play his best NFL ball right now. But he's definitely got size and speed. He looks good. I saw him on the practice field this week. I mean, he stands out. I mean, he's big and strong and fast. I mean, there's no question that Yatir Gross-Matos physically is going to impress scouts. But the question is, can he stay healthy, and how effective can he be? And if he's the in instead of Bosa, what do you think it's going to look like?
I had liked him in the pre-draft process. My previous job, I covered Penn State football. And so growing up in Pennsylvania as well, I've always kept very close tabs on Penn State players. He really is an athletic freak, massive in size, 6'5", 266, 34 7/8-inch arms. He has like an 80+ inch wingspan, very productive player at Penn State. Never translated with Carolina, but Carolina's been one of the poorly run organizations over the last few years in the NFL. And so I thought that he showed some flashes, even though he was banged up earlier in the year. He's one of those players that I want to see a full season of what he can become under the watch of Chris Kosaric. We didn't get to see it enough earlier this year. So if he's healthy, I think that he can be productive as kind of that, defensive end, defensive tackle type of player who can be used inside, outside like Arden Key. But the jury is still out because we've barely seen him in this system under this coaching because he got hurt. But I'm still a believer in the player, and I like the free agency signing at the time when the Niners signed him in free agency.